Good morning. Today is Rosh Chodesh. It's the first day of Cheshvan, the 16th of October. And we're holding by the second reading of Noach, the second parsha of the Torah. And what we'd like to do is focus on one specific part of the second reading. And that has to do with Noah's special role in transforming society. So in the first two, the structure of the Torah is such that the first two parashot don't talk about the Jewish people at all, because they precede the Jewish people. So the leaders and the spiritual leaders and the prophets and the great men and women of those generations were not Jewish. They were just men of God. And Noach was certainly the most important person in the second millennium. So if we look at it, the first parsha in the Torah deals with the first millennium, and it pretty much spans the lifespan of Adam. Adam lived for 930 years, so he pretty much spans the first millennium. Noach was born in the year 1056, according to the Torah, which is 2704 BCE. And that can't be. It's got to be 2706 BC. So maybe it could be, but I don't think it can be. Anyway, he's at the start of the second millennium, and his life spans pretty much the second millennium. He lived for 950 years, and so he passes away at the very beginning of the third millennium. And so the first two parashot, they're the first and second millenniums of history. In each of the millenniums, this is not just in the first and second, this continues on in the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, there is always a central figure who is the figure who represents mundane wisdom, and there's also a figure who represents divine wisdom. It's very rare that it's the same person. The only time that we can maybe point at it being the same person who also unified mundane and divine wisdom is Maimonides in the fourth millennium. In the fifth millennium, sorry. So in that millennium, it could be that it's the same. He gathered that God wanted him to build an ark, and that's how he saved Seth. So Lamech named him that name because he said he will be the one who will give us rest and respite from the difficult labor that we have in working the soil. And at that time, the agricultural revolution was not yet successful. They'd been cast out of the Garden of Eden, but they were living apparently not as farmers yet, because they were missing some very special tools that are needed to become a farmer. And so the sages tell us that Noach was the person who invented the plow. And once you have the plow, think about trying to work a field, and even if you know what seeds are, and you try to plant them without having a plow, it's very, very difficult. Unless you have a very nice piece of land where the ground is soft and damp, it's very hard to plant, especially if you're talking about in Mesopotamia, which is where he's from. So you had to have a plow to get the seeds deep enough into the ground to create actually a good amount of produce. And so Noach developed that. He was a tremendous engineer in that sense. He was an inventor. But he also did something more. The building of the ark. The building of the ark was an incredible feat of engineering. Whatever that ark was, however it functioned, the description in the Torah is very short. We don't know exactly how he made it, but we know it was divided into 3 levels. I don't know if there was such a thing at that time, a 3-level ship. And it was worthy enough to be carried for a whole year on the water without having to make port. It had nowhere to stop, really. And it carried an incredible amount of provisions and of livestock, of animals. And that was an incredible feat in and of itself. After the flood, and still within his lifetime, Noach's descendants, possibly using his engineering skills, built the Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babylon was built. It was also a feat of engineering. There's actually a tower today in Babylon, meaning in Iraq, that they identify as the Tower of Babylon. Now, really, it's just a column. It's a steel column. It could be that it was one of the parts of this structure, whatever it was. To build out of steel was an incredible feat at that time. It wasn't the steel that we have, because that was only invented in the 19th century. But still, it's some sort of metal that was strong enough to hold up a project that big. What is amazing is that everything that Noach did, he tried to do to advance humanity. But the final project, this project of the Tower of Babylon, it could have had a noble purpose, which would have been to unify humanity not against God, but with God. The point was really to unify them. But the people took it in a different direction. And so even though Noach saved the world, he saw the unity that he had created turn against the very principles for which he saved the world. So he's a very tragic figure in that sense. A person who really bettered humanity, who ushered in what we call the agricultural revolution, and who saved the world, but yet at the end, he sees it all falling apart. What most people know about Noach is that at the very end of his of the flood, God forged a universal covenant with mankind through him, and this covenant is known by his name, the Noachide covenant. Even though the sages tell us that six of the seven Noachide laws were already given to Adam, but apparently Noach was the only one who kept them, or one of the few that kept them. And God needed to make a new covenant with him after the flood. The Noachide covenant between God and humanity serves as a contract whose purpose is to both ensure that the world never again sink to its antediluvian level, meaning the level of degeneration that we talked about last week, before the flood, and to provide a new starting point for humanity's pursuit of its goals as masters of the mundane realm. The Noachide covenant affords every single human being a chance to grow both spiritually and materially in the shadow of God, as Noach had done prior to the flood. With this covenant with humanity made through him, Noach was the individual who was meant to serve as a conduit to the great revelation of divinity that would have been in the second millennium. In other words, he really was not meant to have ended his life with such tragedy as the Tower of Babylon. He really was meant to have given the entire Torah to the people, to the world. But he himself couldn't live up to that. And so Noach failed to live an exemplary life dedicated to godliness after the flood. What happened to him? We know that he became a drunkard. He fell into a stupor. And this happens a lot of times to people who are able to carry us through very difficult times. But once the pressure is off, once you've reached safe haven, the toll, the weight of what they had to carry, their burden, is too much for them and they fall apart. And so in Noach's case, what we find is not just that he fell apart personally, but afterwards he even created what the world has been suffering from for many, many generations since then. This idea of his son Ham, who eventually became, we usually identify him with the people living in Africa, and he cursed him and his descendants with being slaves. And we've seen that used throughout history as a excuse, as a reason for enslaving Africans. But of course, that was part of his falling apart. That wasn't a positive thing. It wasn't meant to be something positive. That's why the Torah tells us the whole introduction to it, which is that he became a drunkard, and then indeed Ham did something that he wasn't supposed to have done. But Noach should not have the power to enslave a third of humanity. But again, that was used because it was taken out of context and misunderstood. It wasn't seen as part of his tragedy. Rather, people somehow saw it or used it as a statement of the destiny of those who come from Africa. So this is our teaching for today, the second reading of Noach. And God willing, we'll meet again tomorrow and continue.